If you've been experiencing this harder challenge in life recently, a little more emotionally turbulent, the depression, the anger, the frustration, overwhelm, whatever it may be for you, this episode is to support you through that. And so this is the seventh episode of Ember in the Dark, and we're going to discuss releasing anchors. If you're unclear what anchors are, that's in my last episode, episode 6, talking about what anchors are and what that means for you. So if you want, you can tune into this episode or catch up on the last episode and come on back and listen to this. For those of you that are all caught up, let's get into it. Welcome back to the seventh episode of Ember in the Dark. I am your host, Mike Warren. And again, today we're going to discuss, releasing those anchors. And so last episode, those anchors, in a quick recap, is those emotional resonances that are holding us back in experiencing more, expanding more of our life, what we have to offer, our consciousness, and ultimately are kind of keeping us to a certain experience of ourselves, other people, and the world. What I believe is the purpose is to clear up some aspects within ourselves that maybe we have been avoiding, unaware of, and maybe shunned from past experiences in our life, typically associated with some of the childhood trauma. And so in the last episode, I discussed, we got to swim down to those anchors and begin to start knotting them and untying them such that they're no longer limiting ourselves from raising the frequency, raising the vibration, right? Again, a beautiful quote that Carl Jung has spoken to that I just have been attached to is, if you want branches to grow to heaven, you need roots that grow to hell. And this is the challenge that some people are unwilling to do, is go in and face those aspects within ourselves to begin to start healing and releasing those parts within, such that we can start to grow those branches. The deeper the roots, the stronger the plant, the tree, the taller, the greater the branches. And so one of the processes that I utilized for myself is, honestly, it's just being with the experience. So for me, there would be times where, I'd feel pretty good, I guess you can say, for the most part. And if you've kind of been going through this challenging experience, the denser emotional frequencies of shame, guilt, regret, depression, those heavier emotional resonances, pretty good is, kind of a overstatement. However, I'd have days where I feel like I'm moving ahead, I'm getting my feet kind of stable, and life's going to turn for the better. And then out of nowhere, I'd get hit with these waves that just knock me down, and I just get brought down to deeper depths within, and it feels like there's no light, there's no hope. And then I'm kind of struggling, attempting to fight it, wondering why, what's going on, where did I go wrong, what do I need to change, what do I need? All of these questions and ruminating thoughts. And unfortunately, when it comes to the emotional aspect of the body, we're not able to think our way out of it. I have an exceptional brain and thinking capacity. That's something that I have attached myself and prided myself, about who I am, is my ability to see concepts and ideas and link dots and connect them and describe it in a way for others such that they can grasp it. However, connecting with the emotional body, I've always just thought myself through it and provided myself a different perspective that I could learn to let it go and move on to the next and on to the next. However, this experience, I've learned that doesn't work. It's a matter of getting integrated into the body and connecting with the body, right? And so using the analogy of, swimming to the surface or in the ocean with the anchors, that's us attempting to swim and escape the emotional feeling in the heart space. So our consciousness within our body is attempting to escape through the mind. However, it doesn't work that way. That's where we get trapped and we start overthinking, we ruminate over the thoughts and the stories that we've been telling ourselves and the struggles we've been having. And therefore we get trapped in the mind and nothing changes. I would assert, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or I'm crazy, is a lot of us that have kind of been going through this struggle, that's what we do, is we kind of get caught up in a story, the emotion comes up, we don't like the feeling, whatever it is, and then we start thinking about why we're experiencing it. Where did this come from? Where did it happen? What do I need to do? What is this about? And we start spinning our tires around and around in the story, which reaffirms the story and solidifies it more and more and makes it more concrete and real, that it all of a sudden starts to become something that we take on and believe. However, what I'm here to tell you is it's not true. It's just a story. And so where the courage and at the same time, the challenge comes in is when those events are triggering and you start to have those, I'll call it a flare up of those emotional responses, those emotional resonances. That is actually the time to stop, slow down, and go into the feeling. Whatever the feeling is, anger, stress, overwhelm, frustration, fear, anxiety, depression, whatever it may be for you, we don't want to feel those feelings. It's pretty common. Most people don't want to feel those things. However, if you're experiencing them, there's a reason as to why. They're being brought to the surface of your experience, of your consciousness, such that you can observe, unpack, and release them. Think of bubbles in the ocean, right? With the pressure in the ocean, a bubble, a tiny bubble, by the time it reaches the surface, can become the size of a car, right? And so these bubbles are deep within our system and they start to bubble up to the surface, and then they come into our consciousness, and then we have a choice once they arise. Once we become aware of that bubble, and once once it is present in our consciousness, I know I'm guilty of this. I get caught up in it. And I've had other opportunities or moments where I've done something different and I had a different experience. Again, it is easier said than done. Because when that bubble comes up to my consciousness, I attach to it. I start feeling the feelings and making a story and associating the story to the feelings, which just keeps the feelings going and going and going. And what I started to recognize is it's coming from a place of observation. That is what is required. And I have two experiences of this personally in the past where I was able to release the bubble or the emotional context of my experience in a way that didn't hinder me anymore. Like I said in my last video, it's kind of like carrying a 30-pound backpack for many years and you take it off for the first time. You don't even realize you've been carrying the weight until you take it off, because it's just become part of who and what you are, right? And so one of the times I had this experience was I was in a meditation. And during my meditation, there was this story that was playing out, and there was a lot of fear and anxiety around the story. The story is irrelevant because it's about the emotional context. Everyone who's experienced fear knows what fear is. The mechanism for delivering that fear is different for everybody else, right? So the story's irrelevant. However, in a meditation, there was a lot of fear and anxiety around this story that my mind was playing. I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't shake it off. And it was weird because a lot of my meditations were very peaceful, very expansive. And this one time, it was just like this scary, fearful story about me and stuff happening with my family, etc. And so I would fight it. And no, this is not real. This is not happening. I really resist that experience of what was going on. And then there was a point of me that I said, I just surrendered. And it's like, this is true. This is what is happening. And so once I surrendered to my experience in the moment, because at the end of the day, in that meditation, that's what my experience was. And so in that moment, it was true for me. Even though in the grand scheme of things, it's not a true story. It's what my mind was making up. However, in the moment, it was true. So I surrendered to the experience. And then I just started observing the emotion. And what I recognized is it became heightened. It got the story, the emotions, the feeling I have is like rapid fire. The story started picking up pace. The emotions started getting increase in intensity. And I could literally feel in my heart space vibration happening like rapid fire, like, and that's like machine gun rapid fire vibration in my chest. And then after I kept sitting with it, not judging it, not holding on to it, not attaching to it, just observing it and surrendering to it and just allowing it to expand, then it just shot out the top of my head like a bubble. And after that moment, I felt lighter. I was like, what the heck was that? And then when I thought about the story of that, what I believed was creating that emotional experience, that emotion that I had originally with the story, it was no longer there. Meaning the anchor around that emotional resonance was released. Such now that the experience externally or the thoughts, there's nothing for them to attach to. And the second time, it was a really depressive time for me. And I remember going into the basement of my house after some financial stuff that had happened with my wife and a dentist with my daughter's, an emergency situation that we needed to extract a tooth with my daughter. And financially, I just wasn't capable to take care of it at that moment. And I remember just feeling like the low of the low, like money was tight in the family. Here I am thinking I need to provide better and I'm not good enough as it is. And therefore I'm failing as a father, as a husband, as a provider, all of that. So I went into the basement, I was crying, just completely depressed. And I remember laying on the floor, my arms were out like this. And I just said to myself, here I am. Like, this is where I'm at. And the exact same experience happened. I felt this bubble, this vibration in my chest, and it started to navigate up and out the crown of my head. And I remember thinking to myself, once that bubble released, I was like, I feel like shit still. However, I feel way lighter. And I can honestly say at that time in my life, I hadn't dreamed. Like when I would go to bed, 10, 11 o'clock at night, set my alarm. And it was like, as soon as I closed my eyes, I wake up. Like my alarm is off. Like there was nothing in between. It's like instant eyes close, instant wake up. I haven't laughed. I haven't smiled for months. Like I said, I haven't dreamed for months. And after that day of releasing that bubble laying on the basement floor, I went outside and I was washing the outside of the house, and my daughter was looking at me through the window, and I started spraying her and I scared her and, at the window. And in that space, I started smiling. I was like, wait a second, I'm kind of enjoying this. I'm laughing. I went to bed a little late that evening because I had a bunch of energy that I haven't had because it felt like everything was just sapped from me. And when I went to bed, it was like maybe midnight, 11:30 midnight, and I was up at 4:30 in the morning, wide awake, feeling rested. I had dreamed the night, and it was like I had the energy to go work out. And so I went and did a workout before I went to, my regular job, which I haven't been able to do for years, apologies, months prior to this. And so that's where I recognized that these anchors, the situation and events we have in our life, are coming up for us, not to us. They're not things that are happening to us. They're coming up for us. And so when you are caught up in one of those, turbulent times where the wave is hitting you, my suggestion is to go be with it. Go all in on the emotion that you're experiencing. You don't have to physically do anything other than just lie there and be with it and observe it. Just honor it for it coming up. Because what may be happening externally is kind of like the thing that is stirring the muck up at the bottom of the barrel. So the external events, the external situations are the things that are stirring the muck up in our system that we, quote unquote, have the opportunity to address and look at. And so it is happening for us. Where a lot of people get caught up is when these things come up, we associate a story to it, we believe the story, we surrender to all of that, and we attach to it so heavily that we don't allow it to pass through. We block ourselves off because we don't like feeling it. Who wants to feel depressed? Who wants to feel guilt? Who wants to feel shame? We're all attached to this idea of feeling happy, joyful, excited. 100% of the time. That is not effective. There needs to be balance. If everything was light, well, you would not see anything. You need contrast. There is an aspect of shadow and darkness that comes with light. And it's the contrast that gives depth, that gives experience. If you were happy 24/7 for the entirety of your life, eventually that would get very dull and very bland, because that is just what things are. It doesn't have the same excitement and oomph as it would as if you were someone who has been experiencing sadness, and then there's a moment of happiness that comes afterward that you can actually honor and be truly grateful for. Right? So there's a level of compassion that comes through this process for yourself and others. And so releasing these anchors is taking the time for you to essentially go be with yourself and allow that emotion to come to the surface. Right? Like I said, you don't have to do anything. If you feel compelled to, if there's anger coming up and you feel compelled to scream in a pillow, that works effectively. Right? You want to, be in a position such that you're not hurting yourself or others. However, allowing yourself the space to experience what needs to be experienced, because it's coming up for a reason. And if we're too attached to the experience and not wanting to take it on, it's just going to keep happening. Right? And there's a famous saying that a lot of people say, the only way out is through. This is where I find it really, really hits home, is the only way out of this denser experience is actually through the experience. And if we're too busy ruminating in our minds and going through the thoughts of how we should be doing things and thinking about the emotions, unfortunately, we're not actually going through the emotion itself. And so when those emotions do arise, that's the signpost, that's the flag saying, hey, check in with me. Because again, that's that, like I said in the last episode, that younger version of ourselves that maybe didn't get the attention that it required or requested at that young age. And so it's acting up again to get your attention now. And so you going inward into this space is bringing that attention. Right? Now, if a child is acting out and they do something, they make a mess, a 5-year-old makes a mess because they want attention, you have two ways to address it. Number one is you can scream and scold the child. At some point, the child's going to look for punishment as attention, or you can check in with the child, have some fun, bring some love, bring some compassion to that child. And eventually their way of gaining or asking for attention won't be like a temper tantrum or wrecking or getting messes, for example. Same thing applies with us. When these emotions are rising to the surface, it's a time for you to check in with yourself and give yourself that compassion, that love that maybe you didn't receive, because you are the source of it. And this is something that I'm learning now to start applying with myself now. And that's what we'll talk more about in the next episode is, loving yourself in this challenging period. I get it. It's, for some of us, it may seem like we don't deserve it, yet we got to be the source of it. And so if that resonates with you, tune into the next episode. And for those of you that are enjoying these episodes and you want to catch up on more, all the links are in my bio. You can catch me on YouTube if you want to watch the videos. And then again, on all listening platforms, your Spotify, Apple Music, etc. With that being said, I truly appreciate you tuning in. I hope this has been of value to you. And if it has been, and you know someone that may benefit from hearing some different perspectives that can support them in a challenging period, please share this, like, comment, whatever you want to do to support the growth of this podcast. And always remember, I really want to hit this home is, no matter how dark it may seem to get, even the smallest of embers can light your path. And my hope is this podcast is becoming that ember for you. With that being said, thanks for tuning in. Look forward to connecting with you in future episodes.